Good evening and welcome to the class, folks. Sorry for the delay in not taking the classes in between, and hope that your passion and interest in following up closely with me and asking when the next class will be really encouraged me to resume the classes. And later, when I was planning for the data analyst course that I was planning to teach, I was able to decipher, I was able to understand that we need to start from SQL because SQL is something very important that will help us to fetch the data. And Python is something that we can do a lot of operations on the data once we have the data with us. So there was a slight restructuring that we have to do in terms of starting which subject or which module should we should be starting first. So for time being, I have paused Python. Once we complete a SQL, and then we will be reassuming on the classes for Python. Now in SQL, we will be starting from ground zero, starting that I assume that you don't have any basic or prerequisites knowledge about SQL. So I'll try to start basics of the basics. I will try to begin from ground zero. Okay. Now in today's class, before I teach SQL, I need to tell you what is data and why does the data have to be stored and where the data should be stored and what are the types of data that we will be seeing in the real world and what is actually inside the database and how do we install the database and how do we talk to a database, and all these things we will be discussing. Now the first important point, the first starting point for any data analyst course is data. We need to first understand what is data. What is data? Only then we will be able to take it little further. So what is this data? Okay. Even if you are from a non-technical background, even if you are from a technical background, and then you have a long break, and then you're trying to re-enter the tech industry, this particular topic will really help you to onboard you with good insight, and this will help you to build your fundamentals stronger. So the question was, the first topic that we will be discussing in today's class is what is data. Now we all know data is something that which gives us any meaningful information. We call that as a data. So let's put that one. Any meaningful information around us is called as a data. Okay, well and good. So there are plethora of information around us. There are plethora of data around us. So any meaningful information around us is called as a data. Okay, good. But only when we give an example, only when we list an example, that will make sense, right? So let me give you an example here. The example what I like to give you here is your age. Your age, definitely it should be a number. So that number, that your age is a data. And your name, definitely it should be a text data. That is also called as a data. And then your photograph, and that data is can be represented as an image. So any meaningful information, I repeat, any meaningful information, it could be your age, it could be your name, it could be your photo, all these things which is around us is called as data. Okay, this is the first point I'm trying to insert into your mind so that you are gaining some confidence, understanding the depth and the width of the subject. We know that any meaningful information around us is called as data. Well and good. We understood our age is also a data, our name is also a data, our photo is also a data. Excellent. But why do we need to store data? Data, if it is everywhere around us, why do we need to actually store it? we can just see the data, and we can make an understanding, or we can make some decisions on it. But why does somebody have to store the data? Let's understand that concept. Let's discuss that concept. Why does data need to be stored? Now this is a very important part, because this is the foundation that we have to understand clearly. Only then this will give birth to future more important topics. Okay, why does data need to be stored? Now let me give you a real time example, so that you will be able to understand this question. Say, for example, we have a bank account, and the bank account, every time when we are making a transaction in our Google Pay, the data is getting recorded, the transaction is getting recorded. If in case the transaction is lost, then it is a huge loss for us, because every transaction is very very important, and every record is very very important. So in the banking industry, in the banking domain, every data is important. So banks must store our transaction, so that we can withdraw at any point of time, provided if there is balance in our account. Okay, this is the first point. Where and all is data so essential that we need to store the data? Say, for example, our Aadhaar card. These Aadhaar cards are very very informative, where it holds the personal data about us. It holds the personal data about our name, our age, our address, our biometrics, our image, and every single information about us is stored. And imagine if there and that data is not stored, we will not be able to know how many people are residing in this particular region, and we will not be able to make any decisions without the data. So can I say that data helps in decision making? Data helps in decision making. And one more thing is, data helps in problem solving. So data helps in decision making, and data helps in problem solving, and that is why we need to store data. Okay, if we are not storing data, if the data is lost or wasted, then we cannot make a business decisions, we cannot solve problems, we will be in a difficult state for making decision. If not stored, it is lost or wasted. Okay, now there are a lot many companies are investing millions and billions of money into data, so that they wanted to understand how the data is giving a pattern. So based on those pattern, there are a lot of investors are willing to invest in certain companies. Say, for example, one classic example is Swiggy does know that in this particular region, in this particular place, what are the food cravings of people. It has a list of data based on what are the orders that we it has received in the past. It can study that data, and it can make a decision making. Say, for example, in during the daytime, in this particular region, in this particular location, there's a high order of biryani or non-veg getting sold. So based on that data, it is helping the restaurants to prepare and be ready with a lot of non-veg food, so that that can be sold. Okay, the next classical example, as we spoke, let us put it down in the notes. Banks must store your transactions. Banks must store your transactions, so you can withdraw anytime. So you can withdraw anytime. We understood what is data. We understood why data has to be stored. The next thing is that, if at all we are convinced that we have to store the data, but where do we store data? Let's take that point. Where should data be stored? Now this is an important topic, because this in future will give birth to a new topic that we will be discussing in the in the most of the classes. Now, where should the data be stored? In the olden days, when I say olden days, maybe in somewhere in 1960s to 1990s, we were storing datas. We were storing datas in the old days, in the good old days. We were storing datas in papers and files. Somewhere between 1960s, 1970s to 1990s, or up to 2000, you can keep. We were storing most of the data, most of the bank transactions in the ledger books or in papers and files. Later, we thought that it is very difficult to have papers or store data in papers and files. That is when we stepped into a new world called as in the modern world, we are storing the data in the databases. We call that the databases, in our understanding, we call that as a digital storage. Now, in the olden days, we were storing data in from 1960s to 1990s or to up to 2000. We were storing data in papers and files. Later, when things were evolving, when technology was evolving, we started to store data not in papers and files. We started to move or store the data in databases. Now, what are these databases? Databases are nothing but it is like a digital storage. Okay. Karthik, if you can ask me, Karthik, can you give me an example for this? A classic example, if you are a cricket fan, instead of a diary of cricket scores, instead of a diary of cricket scores, I can store or I can see the scores of Tendulkar right from the beginning till the very end. How much did he score into an application? There is an application by name Crick Bus, where this application stores almost not only one cricketer scores, almost all the cricketer scores. I can see them, they have stored it in their databases, millions can see live updates. So even if somebody wanted to know the score of Tendulkar in his 100th match, or I wanted to know what was the last scored by Tendulkar, what was the last score scored by an XYZ cricketer, all those things, if I store it in a diary, that is very difficult. And that's why we have moved to a modern database where in ClickBus application, almost all the cricketer scores, I can see that they have stored it in their digital storage, in their databases, so that not only one or two or three can view that score, it can be viewed by millions and millions of people as a real update. That is why we are storing the data not in papers and files anymore. We are storing the data in databases. Now, we understood what is data. We understood why data need to be stored. We understood where data should be stored. The next topic is what are the different types of data that we have. Okay, different types of data. If you can give me that, then this will give you some more insight. What are the different types of data? Like, if you in the real world, we have so much of data around us. We have text data, number data, we have image data, YouTube video data, so much of data around us. All these data that you see around you can be categorized into only three types of data. I repeat, in the real world, we have so many types of data. All these data can be structured, can be categorized into three types. Let us understand what are the three types. The first type of data, we call that as structured data. The first type of data, we call that as a structured data. What is the structured data? Very simple, very simple. Anything if you can, any data which you can store it inside a row and column, any data which you can store it inside a table, we call that data as a structured data. So let me say any data that can be any data that can be stored that can be stored inside the table. I have not taught you what is a table, so please bear with me. I will explain it. Any data that can be stored inside the table or in a tabular form or in rows and columns, care are called as structured data. So what is a structured data? Any data that can be stored inside the table or in a tabular form or in rows and columns are called as structured data. These structured data, one example is SQL database. SQL database. What is an SQL database? We will see in the coming classes. But one classic example, what I can give you here for structured data is students marks table. So inside the students marks table, we will have the student name, we will have the student roll number, we will have the list of subjects that the student is appearing for, and the marks that he has scored. So all these things we can represent inside a structured format. That is why we call that as a structured data. Okay, guys, sorry. So any data that can be stored inside the table or in a tabular form or in rows and columns, particularly SQL database, we call that as a structured data. That a student marks table is one classical example. The next thing is that unstructured data. What do we mean by an unstructured data? Any data, okay, any data which cannot be captured inside a table, which cannot be placed inside a tabular form, or any data which is in a free form and there is no fixed structure, we call that as an unstructured data. We call that as an unstructured data. So let me give you a note on it. Any data which is in free form and no fixed structure, those data are called as unstructured data. Those data are called as unstructured data. Example could be in WhatsApp voice notes, because this does not these data WhatsApp voice note cannot be placed inside a table, so that becomes an unstructured data. Your YouTube videos cannot be structured into a table, so that becomes an unstructured data. So any data which is in free form and not having fixed structure, we call that as an unstructured data. Examples are WhatsApp voice notes and YouTube videos. The next third important data type that we have is called as semi-structured data. What is the semi-structured data? So any data which falls in between structured data and unstructured data, we call that as a semi-structured data. So the semi-structured data is residing or will be in the form of a JSON format or an XML format. Now, if you ask me what is a JSON format or an XML format, very simple, I can give you an example. Now, there is a Word document. That Word document format is .doc format. If it is a PDF document, that format will be .pdf. If it is a PowerPoint document, that format will be .ppt. Likewise, semi-structured data will reside in a format. That file format is called as a JSON file format or an XML file format. If you are very inquisitive to know what is the abbreviation of JSON abbreviation is JavaScript Object Notation Format, and XML format is also another format. So semi-structured is data which is having the file format of JSON or XML. So let me write any data in between structured data and unstructured data, we call it as semi-structured. We call it as semi-structured data. And this data and this semi-structured data, resides in the form of a JSON or a XML format. If you are interested to know what is a JSON is abbreviated as JavaScript object notation file. JavaScript object notation file. So it is not necessary for you to know what is a JavaScript object notation file, but just understand that most of the time a semi-structured data will reside in the form of a JSON file. Okay. Now, if you want to know an example for a semi-structured data, I would say that your Amazon shopping cart, which you are getting, which is getting auto saved. You are adding some things to your cart, Amazon shopping cart, but in behind the scene, the items that you have stored inside the cart will be saved as a JSON file. That is called as a semi-structured data. Your Amazon shopping cart saved in a JSON file. Okay. So three types of data. The first type is a structured data, second type is unstructured data, third type is semi-structured data. Okay. The next part, what we are going to discuss. The first point, what we are discussing, what is inside a database. We understood that database, it's a digital storage, or it's a medium where we can store some data. But what is inside a database? Let's understand that a database is like a digital cupboard. So inside the cupboard or a wardrobe in your home, you have a wardrobe, you have a cupboard. So inside a cupboard or a wardrobe, you definitely have some racks and shelves where you can store some things and fabrics and clothes. Likewise, in database also, it is like a digital cupboard where there are some tables inside. These tables can be called as a drawers, or there are some rows or shelves inside where you can store your clothes, and there are some columns there where you can know the first row or the first column is helping us to store winter clothes, or the second shelf is helping us store some summer clothes. Likewise, we can understand what is present inside a database. So let me give you some points here. A database is like a database is like a digital cupboard, okay, well and good. A database is like a digital cupboard, we understood. What is the next thing that we have to see here? Inside the database, we would see a lot of tables. These tables, you can imagine that, like drawers or wardrobes. Okay, inside the database, you have a lot of tables. These tables can be thought, you can think them like a wardrobe or a cupboard, or drawers, where these tables are made up of rows, where in those rows, you can place your clothes. Or in the table, you have columns. In the columns, you can name each column as a label, so that in this table, in this particular column, this is a serial number column where you have only serial number, where this is a name column, you'll have only names there. So likewise, inside the database, we have tables, where in the tables we will be able to store the data. What are the things that we understand now? What is data? Why does a data need to be stored? Where should the data be stored? And the types of data, what is inside a database? Now let us understand a little more greater things. The sixth topic, what I want to cover here is what is a table made up of? Okay, what is a table made up of? Because we understood from the database that inside the database there is a table. So let us understand what is inside a table. Tables, as you know, it is made up of columns and rows. So let us understand what are columns. So let's say that usually tables are made up of columns. So inside the columns, you can have, you can also call the column names as attributes. Say for example, there is column A called as a name. There is another column B called as age. There is another column C called as marks. Okay. And what is a recipe for making a table? The recipe for making a table is two elements. One is columns, another is rows. Usually the rows are, say for example, in this case, column A is name, column B is age, column C is marks. And the next thing is that we are not the next element to make a table is rows. Definitely these rows are called as records. Say for example, in this case, the name is Karthik and the age is 30 and the marks is 95. Marks is 95. So a table consists of rows and columns and rows. And what are the things there? I have given you as an example, So let me give you one more detailed thing here. Now, if you want to know how a table is, you can take up an Excel sheet. In the Excel sheet, every row that you are seeing. Say, for example, I'm trying to open Excel. Okay, this is an app here. In this Excel sheet, a blank Excel sheet, the A, B, and C and D, all these are columns, and 1, 2, 2, and 3, all these are rows. So every row is equivalent to one student. Every row is equivalent to one student, and every column is equivalent to a detail about a student. So I'm writing example, every Excel sheet, every row is a student detail, and every column is a detail about a student. Okay, now so far so good. Okay, now I want to give you a little more things so that you will be able to understand and a little bit, you will be able to take it forward. How many of you know that, there are some trending things that is happening in the tech world, and let us understand and connect whatever we have learned thus far. Let us connect that one to the latest and the greatest technology that we will be seeing. Okay, future data is nothing but a future of a future and AI. We will list down. We are giving a heading by name. Data is something that is very important, and data is the one which is fueling the every new technology. So can I give a point? And also I will explain with an example, with real-time example, so that you will be able to understand. Data fuels every new technology. If somebody is saying, they are saying that, data fuels every new technology. Unless and until they give you some real-time example, it is hard for us to believe. So we have to have at least some facts that it is discussed. Only then we will be able to understand that data fuels every new technology. What are the new technology and how data is fueling it? Let's understand. There is one important trending thing that is happening in the market, in the tech world. We call that as ML. For people who don't know what is ML, in the tech world, we call that as a machine learning. Now let us understand how this data, whatever we are going to learn, how that is, fueling this latest and greatest technology. Let us understand. We all know that, machine learning is a talk of the town, and many people, have been using this word. It's a machine learning, it's machine learning algorithm, and it does a lot many things. I will give you one simple example, and based on that, you will be able to understand how machine learning is, we are getting used to machine learning, and how machine learning helps us, or how machine learning is integrated in our day-to-day life. Machine learning is nothing but, it learns. Machine learning, let me like this. Machine learning learns from past data. Learn from past data. Again, that does not make any sense. What does it machine learning? Machine learning learns from past data. Can we have a solid example? Very important. Now I'll give you one example. We've all seen Netflix. Okay, in Netflix, if you watch a movie on horror, after watching that movie, automatically Netflix will recommend you, another horror movie based on what you have watched in the past. And if you have watched a movie on comedy and action, it will read your data from the last data, from the past data. It will read about your watch history and suggest movies according to that. That is how OTT, machine learning algorithm and machine learning is integrated in our day-to-day life. You can also see this in Amazon, where if you buy a product A, they will see that, in the end of the product, when you're trying to buy it, you will also see that, customer A, along with product A, they've also bought product B and C. It is giving you that, you can add other two products also along with this product A. So how it is trying to give you these suggestions, how it is trying to give you from these recommendations, these machine learning models are learning from our past purchase order history, watch history, everything. It is trying to learn and trying to come up with a prediction model, and it is trying to recommend products, and all these things are integrated in our day-to-day life. And for this one, machine learning is a new technology, and data is definitely fueling every new technology. Okay, this is the first thing. The next thing is that, have you heard about somebody talking about DL? Have you heard about somebody talking about DL? What is this DL? DL is nothing but a deep learning. Deep learning. Again, this is the talk of the town, and many people are working on deep learning. What is this deep learning does? Deep learning handles the complex data. Deep learning handles complex data. Okay, it handles complex data, but what does it do? How is it connected to the real world? Very simple. Most of our phones have this Face ID. Most of our phones have this Face ID. There are so many, focal points that we have on our face. All these focal points have been is our complex data. It manages to handle this complex data, and then we are able to use this Face ID to unlock a phone. And that is where, deep learning is connected. And deep learning is again a trending technology, where again data is fueling these deep learning too. You can see Face ID, how it is working, and Tesla's self-driving cars are also based on a deep learning, and also based on deep learning. There is another thing called as NLP. NLP is called as NLP is called as natural language processing. Natural language processing. What is this natural language processing? It understands the human language, and it reverts back or replies back to us. Understands human language. Now, can I give you one classical example where we are using NLP in our day-to-day life? We have all used ChatGPT. We have all used Google Translate, where these softwares are trying to understand the human natural language, and it processes that and tries to get the result to us in whatever question we are asking. So NLP is a trending technology where data is fueling this new technology. So I could say Google Translate, Google Translate, and Chat D. Okay. The next point, the trending thing is Gen AI. How many of you have heard this one? Generative AI. Let's understand how this Gen AI, generative AI, is being, data is fueling this one. This Gen AI or this generative AI creates a new data. How is that possible, Karthik? How it can create a new data? We are all using it. Let's say that we are all used to Chat GPT. If at all I'm asking Chat GPT to write a summary about India, it can write a summary, and the data is new because nobody has written like that thus far. So it has the potential to write and create a new data. And also ChatGPT offers an another image creation tool by name DAL images, where it helps us to create new images. Again, data is being used extensively to build or to fuel this Gen AI, where it helps us to create generative AI, where it helps us to create new data. Okay, likewise, we have Gemini coding apps, where if you want to build any app, Gemini is again a generative AI which helps us to build data, and it builds and data fuels every new technology. So be it machine learning, be it deep learning, be it NLP, natural language processing, be it Gen AI, generative AI, you need to understand data is a core fundamental thing. And if you want to speak to the data, if you want to get your job done with the data, you need to speak a language by name SQL, so that you will be able to do a lot many things. So what is the final observation that we give here? AI is useless. AI is useless without data. AI is useless without data. Data is the fuel. AI is the engine. So without fuel, even if you have engine, that does not make any sense. So this is very, very important. Okay. I will stop the class here. If you have any questions, you can ask.